will be talking about the private sector. There's a question that we had discussed in class earlier about the characteristic features of the private sector. Now, there are two parts to the answer to this question. The first part will have the legal forms of private ownership, and the second part you must mention the characteristic features of the private sector, which has the production of goods and services, the profit motive, and competition. So the first part, which is the legal forms of private ownership, you know that there is the first and the most basic type of ownership, that is the sole trader or a proprietor, where you have an individual who takes all the risk in starting a business and runs the business and also enjoys profit for self. But then the second part talks about second type has the partnership firms, where two or more individuals come together to set up a business, and they also take all the risk in organizing the business and also enjoying the profit. Now, sole traders and partnership firms enjoy the profits, and also at the same time they also bear unlimited liability, which means that they are responsible to pay more and beyond what they have contributed to their business in case of any loss, or to pay back to their creditors. The third part, or the third type of legal form of private ownership, is a company. In a company, you do not have individuals, but rather shareholders who purchases the share of the company, and then they become the owners of the business. Now, the owners or the shareholders in a company do not run the business on a day-to-day basis, but in turn appoints managers, and the management takes care of the operations of the business. Company has again two parts, that is the private limited company and a public limited company. The private limited company issues shares to only certain individuals and certain organizations, and they cannot be more than 50 shareholders. But a public limited company offers its shares to the general public, and there is no limit on how many shareholders there could be. The next part of the question would be the characteristic features of the private sector, and the first characteristic feature is the production of goods and services. We understand that all companies set up their businesses so that they would produce goods and services or sell them in order to make profit. But to set up a business, they would require certain factors of production like land, labor, capital. And these they would have to borrow and buy from households. They would have to purchase land, or maybe rent a place where they could set up their business. They would have to pay for the services of people working in their organization, or they would also have to borrow money from savings, and they would have to pay an interest on that. Once they have the factors of production, they would be able to produce and sell these goods and services back to the households. So we see a circular flow that is observed in the production and selling and buying of goods and services. The next characteristic feature is goods and services are produced by businesses. Maybe you have different types of goods and services being produced, but these goods and services are produced so that they could be sold and the company would earn profit. The profit motive is the most important motive of why businesses are taking the risk of setting up their business. Profit happens when the amount of money that they receive from selling these goods and services are more than the amount of money spent in setting up the business to pay for the factors of production. When the amount received is more than the amount spent, they would have the profit. The third characteristic feature of the private company is competition. Private companies or private firms always have competition, which means that there are other businesses which are selling and producing the same thing that you are selling and producing. So the idea is to do better than your competitors, because if you do not produce these goods and services at a cheaper rate than your competitors, if you are not producing a better quality than your competitors, you would lose behind in the race, because consumers always have a choice. They need not come only to a certain business. They have a choice to, you could say, shop around, go and check around other businesses which are offering them a good deal. So these are your characteristic features of the private company, and this is how you will answer to that question.